I never thought I would spend a Thursday morning arguing with a woman named Brenda about snow removal methods in the parking lot of a grocery store. But there I was, living that exact nightmare. My name is Stephen Callahan, and I have lived in the Pinewood Heights community in Boulder, Colorado for the past 7 years. For the most part, life had been pretty good. The mountains were beautiful, my neighbors were friendly enough, and the community itself was well maintained. But everything changed when Brenda Patterson became the president of our homeowner association. It started on a cold January morning when I received a formal letter in my mailbox. The envelope had the HOA logo printed on it, which immediately made my stomach sink. Nothing good ever came in those envelopes. I opened it while standing at my mailbox, the freezing wind biting at my face. "Dear Mr. Callahan," the letter began. "It has come to our attention that your snow removal contractor is not properly clearing your driveway and walkways according to HOA standards. Your contractor must clear snow within 12 hours of snowfall ending, remove all ice, and ensure proper disposal of snow away from community drainage systems. Your current contractor has violated these standards on multiple occasions. Please rectify this situation immediately or face fines of $200 per day until compliance is achieved." I read the letter 3 times, my anger growing with each pass. My contractor, Mike Henderson, was a local guy I had been using for 5 years. He was reliable, affordable, and did excellent work. I had never received a single complaint about snow removal before, and we had just gotten through several winters without any issues. I walked back into my house and immediately called Mike. "Hey, did you get any complaints about the snow removal at my place?" "No, nothing at all," Mike said, sounding confused. "I cleared your driveway yesterday morning at 6, did a full job, salted everything. What's going on? HOA is saying you're not doing it right. They're threatening to fine me $200 a day. That's ridiculous. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what I'm doing." "I know, Mike. I'm going to sort this out. Don't worry about it." After hanging up, I decided to go directly to Brenda Patterson's house. She lived 4 streets over in one of the larger homes in the community. I had met her a few times at HOA meetings, and she always struck me as the type of person who loved having power over others. She was in her late 40s, always had her blonde hair styled in that distinctive "I want to speak to the manager" cut, and wore expensive workout clothes despite never actually working out. I knocked on her door and she answered after a minute, looking annoyed that someone had interrupted her morning. "Stephen," she said, not even attempting to sound pleasant, "what can I do for you?" "I got this letter about my snow removal contractor," I said, holding up the paper. "I need to understand what the problem is because Mike has been doing great work for years." Brenda crossed her arms. "The problem is that your contractor is not licensed." "Licensed? What do you mean licensed?" "The HOA board has implemented new regulations. All contractors working within Pinewood Heights must be licensed by the state of Colorado for their specific trade. Your snow removal contractor does not have the proper snow removal and ice management license." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "That's not a real license." "There's no such thing as a snow removal license in Colorado." "Actually, there is. It's under the landscape contractor license category. Your contractor needs to have a proper landscape contractor license that covers snow removal services. Mike has been removing snow for 15 years. He knows what he's doing." "That may be, but he's not licensed and therefore he cannot work in our community. The rules are clear." "When did this rule get implemented?" "Last month at the board meeting." "I didn't hear about any board meeting last month." Brenda's smile was condescending. All residents were notified via email. Perhaps you should check your spam folder. I left her house fuming. Back home, I searched through my emails and finally found a message from the HOA buried in my promotions folder. The email announced a board meeting scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Who has HOA meetings at 2 on a Tuesday? Most people were at work. This was clearly designed to prevent people from attending. I called Mike back. Do you have a landscape contractor license? No, I don't. It's expensive and honestly, I mostly do small residential snow removal. Never needed it before. How much does it cost to get licensed? Around $2,000 for the application, bonding, and insurance requirements. Plus, I'd have to take classes and pass a test. It would take months, and I can't afford to invest that kind of money right now. Business has been slow this year. I understood. Mike was a good guy just trying to make a living. This HOA requirement was clearly designed to force out independent contractors in favor of larger, more expensive companies. Probably companies that Brenda or her friends had connections with. That evening, I started researching. If Mike couldn't get licensed, maybe I could do the snow removal myself. But as I dug deeper, I discovered that the HOA rules stated any snow removal done on properties must be performed by a licensed contractor. Even homeowners couldn't do their own snow removal without proper licensing. It was the most absurd rule I had ever encountered. I spent the next few days documenting everything Mike had done. I took photos of my perfectly cleared driveway, my salted walkways, and the proper snow disposal. Everything was immaculate. Mike was doing nothing wrong. This was purely a power play by Brenda. 2 weeks later, I received another letter. This one included a fine of $1,400 for 7 days of non-compliance. I hadn't paid Mike to come back because I didn't want him to waste his time if the HOA was just going to reject his work anyway. Instead, I had been clearing the snow myself, doing just as good a job as Mike ever did. I immediately went to the HOA office, a small building near the community center. Brenda was there with another board member, a thin man named Gerald Foster who always looked miserable. I'm not paying this fine, I said, slapping the letter down on the desk. There's nothing wrong with my snow removal. You don't have a licensed contractor, Brenda said calmly. The fine stands. This is harassment. You're targeting me specifically. We're targeting everyone who isn't following the rules. In fact, we've sent out 17 similar letters this month. 17. You're fining 17 households. Everyone needs to follow the same rules, Stephen. No exceptions. I left the office and immediately started making phone calls. I contacted 12 of the other homeowners who had received similar letters. We organized a meeting at a local coffee shop that weekend. 9 people showed up. We sat around a large table, all sharing our stories. Everyone had used different contractors, all of whom were apparently unlicensed according to the HOA's new standards. The fines ranged from $400 to $2,000, depending on how long people had gone without complying. This is insane, said a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, who lived on the north side of the community. My contractor has been working for 20 years. He's reliable and affordable. Now I have to pay triple to use some big company that Brenda approves of. I think that's exactly what this is about, I said. I did some research. There's a company called Altitude Snow Services that's been advertising in the community newsletter. Guess who owns part of that company? Everyone waited. Brenda's husband, Robert Patterson, he's a silent partner. I found the business registration documents online. The table erupted in angry voices. This was fraud. This was corruption. This was Brenda using her HOA position to funnel business to her family's company. We need to fight this, said Marcus Thompson, a retired lawyer who lived 2 streets over from me. "This is a clear conflict of interest. Brenda should have disclosed this information, and she definitely shouldn't be creating rules that directly benefit her financially." "Can we sue?" someone asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "We could, but HOA litigation is expensive and time-consuming. These cases can drag on for years, and even if we win, we'd each spend thousands in legal fees." "So what do we do?" Patricia asked. I had been thinking about this for days. "What if I get licensed?" Everyone looked at me. "I'm serious. What if I become a licensed landscape contractor? Then I can do snow removal for myself and anyone else who wants to hire me. I'll charge reasonable rates, way less than altitude snow services. It'll cut into their business and show Brenda that her little scheme isn't going to work." "How much does it cost to get licensed?" Marcus asked. "About $2,000, plus I need to take some classes and pass a test. It'll take a few months." "I'll chip in," Patricia said immediately. "If you're willing to do this, I'll help cover the cost." Others around the table agreed. Within minutes, we had collected pledges for $1,500. I would cover the rest myself. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about principle. The next morning, I registered for the Colorado Landscape Contractor License Program. The state required 40 hours of classroom instruction covering topics like horticulture, irrigation, pesticide safety, business practices, and yes, snow and ice management. The nearest program was in Denver, about 30 miles away. Classes were held on weekends for 5 weeks. While waiting for classes to start, I continued documenting every interaction with the HOA. I photographed my property daily, showing perfect snow removal. I saved every email, every letter, every piece of correspondence. Brenda sent me another letter threatening legal action if I didn't pay the fines. I ignored it. Classes started on a cold Saturday morning in February. I drove to Denver and spent the day learning about soil composition, plant biology, and drainage systems. It was actually more interesting than I expected. The instructor, a weathered man named Tom Briggs who had run his own landscaping company for 30 years, was engaging and knowledgeable. "Most people think landscaping is just mowing lawns and planting flowers," Tom said during one lecture. "But it's a real profession that requires knowledge of biology, chemistry, engineering, and business management. A good landscape contractor can prevent flooding, reduce erosion, improve property values, and create sustainable environments." The snow and ice management section came during week 3. This was what I really needed. "Snow removal is about more than just pushing snow around," Tom explained. "You need to understand weight loads, where to place snow piles so they don't damage property or block drainage, which de-icing chemicals to use in different temperature ranges, and how to avoid creating ice dams or other hazards." I took detailed notes. I asked questions. I wanted to know everything. During a break, I talked to Tom privately. "I'm doing this because my HOA is corrupt. They're forcing out independent contractors to benefit a company the HOA president's husband owns." Tom shook his head. "I've seen that before. HOAs can be incredibly corrupt. But good for you for fighting back. The industry needs more honest people." After 5 weeks, I had completed all 40 hours of instruction. Next came the exam. I studied every night for 2 weeks, reviewing my notes, taking practice tests online, and memorizing regulations. The exam was held in a testing center in Denver. It was 100 multiple-choice questions covering everything from plant identification to business ethics. I had 3 hours to complete it. I finished in 2 hours and walked out feeling confident. Results would be available in 2 weeks. While waiting, I continued my snow removal work on my own property. We got hit with a major snowstorm in late February, nearly 14 inches overnight. I was outside at 5 in the morning with my snowblower, clearing my driveway and walkways. By 7, my property was immaculate. At 8, my doorbell rang. It was Brenda, bundled up in an expensive parka. "You still don't have a licensed contractor," she said without preamble. "I'm working on it. Your fines now total $3,200. If you don't pay within 10 days, we'll place a lien on your property." "You won't do that." "Yes, I will. The HOA has the legal right to place liens for unpaid fines, even if those fines are based on fraudulent rules designed to benefit your husband's company." Brenda's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Altitude Snow Services. Your husband Robert is a partner. You created these licensing requirements to force everyone to use expensive contractors like your husband's company. That's fraud, Brenda. You can't prove anything." "I have the business registration documents. I have copies of all your letters. I have statements from 17 homeowners. And I'm getting licensed myself, so your little scheme is going to fall apart." Brenda stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost threatening. "You really want to go to war with the HOA? We can make your life very difficult. Architectural violation inspections, noise complaints, parking violations. We can find 100 ways to fine you. Do your worst. I'm not backing down." She stormed off, and I closed the door feeling both exhilarated and nervous. I had just made a powerful enemy. 2 weeks later, I received my exam results in the mail. I passed with a score of 92%. I was now officially qualified to get my landscape contractor license. The next steps were completing the insurance and bonding requirements. I needed general liability insurance of at least $1 million and a $10,000 surety bond. This cost another $1,200, but Patricia and the others from our coffee shop meeting helped cover it. By mid-March, I had everything submitted to the state. Processing time was listed as 4 to 6 weeks. While waiting, I prepared my business. I registered an LLC called Callahan Landscape Services for $200. I designed a simple logo. I created a website. I was going all in on this. The HOA continued sending threatening letters. The fines now exceeded $5,000. Brenda had started sending letters to the other homeowners in our group as well, threatening liens on all our properties. Marcus Thompson, the retired lawyer, started organizing our legal defense. "If they actually try to place liens, we'll fight it in court. We have a strong case for conflict of interest and improper disclosure." In early April, my license arrived in the mail. I was now a fully licensed landscape contractor in the state of Colorado, authorized to provide snow removal and ice management services. I immediately sent copies of my license to the HOA along with a letter stating that I was now in compliance with all requirements and demanding they rescind all fines. I also offered my services to anyone in the community at rates 40% lower than Altitude Snow Services. Brenda's response came within 2 days. The letter stated that while I was now licensed, I had still violated HOA rules during the months I was unlicensed, so the fines remained valid. Furthermore, the HOA was now implementing an additional requirement that all contractors working in the community must be approved by the HOA board before beginning work. This was getting ridiculous. They were literally making up new rules to block me. I scheduled an emergency HOA meeting. According to the community bylaws, any homeowner could request a special meeting if they gathered signatures from at least 10% of households. With Patricia's help, we got signatures from 32 households, well over the required threshold. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening at 7 o'clock at the community center. I spent days preparing my presentation. The community center was packed. Nearly 80 people showed up, the most I had ever seen at an HOA meeting. Brenda sat at the front table with Gerald Foster and the other two board members, Linda Walsh and Kevin Cooper. They all looked uncomfortable with the turnout. Brenda called the meeting to order. "We're here because Mr. Callahan has requested a special meeting to discuss HOA snow removal policies." I stood up and walked to the front. I had printed handouts for everyone, detailing everything that had happened. I distributed them as I spoke. For the past 4 months, Brenda Patterson and this HOA board have been implementing rules that are designed to force homeowners to use expensive snow removal contractors. Specifically, they're trying to funnel business to Altitude Snow Services, a company partially owned by Brenda's husband, Robert Patterson. This is a conflict of interest and potentially fraud. Murmuring spread through the crowd. I have documentation showing that Brenda never disclosed her husband's ownership stake in Altitude Snow Services. I have copies of business registration documents. I have letters sent to 17 different homeowners threatening fines for using independent contractors. And I have evidence that these licensing requirements were implemented without proper notice to the community. Brenda stood up. "This is slander. My husband's business dealings are none of the HOA's concern." "They are when you're making rules that directly benefit your family financially," I countered. "You have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the community, not your personal bank account." Marcus Thompson stood up from the audience. "I'm a retired attorney, and I've reviewed all the documentation Stephen has provided. There are serious legal and ethical violations here. The board should immediately rescind all fines related to snow removal and revoke any rules that were implemented without proper disclosure and community input." Several people applauded. Linda Walsh, one of the other board members, looked genuinely shocked. "Brenda, is this true? Does Robert own part of Altitude Snow Services?" Brenda's jaw was clenched. "Robert has business interests in many companies. I don't monitor everything he does." "But you knew about Altitude specifically," Linda pressed. "I may have been aware, yes. And you didn't think that was relevant when you were creating rules requiring licensed contractors." The room was silent, everyone watching this confrontation. "I acted in the best interest of the community," Brenda said. "Licensed contractors provide better service and reduce liability for the HOA." "That's a lie," I said loudly. "My previous contractor, Mike Henderson, provided excellent service for years. The only thing that changed was your desire to make money off your neighbors." Another homeowner stood up, an older man named David Chen. "I've been living here for 12 years, and this is the most corrupt thing I've ever seen from an HOA board. Brenda needs to resign immediately." Others started voicing agreement. The meeting dissolved into chaos with people shouting, demanding answers, and calling for the entire board to be replaced. Brenda tried to regain control, banging her gavel. "Everyone needs to calm down. We can discuss this civilly." "There's nothing civil about what you've done," Patricia Rodriguez shouted. "You've stolen thousands of dollars from your neighbors through fraudulent fines." Gerald Foster, who had been silent until now, stood up. "I resign from the board effective immediately." "I didn't know about any of this and I won't be part of it." Kevin Cooper followed. "I resign as well." Linda Walsh looked at Brenda with disgust. "You lied to us. You told us these rules were recommended by our insurance company. You never mentioned your husband's business." "I didn't lie. I simply didn't mention every irrelevant detail." "It's not irrelevant, Brenda. You committed fraud." The meeting ended with the board in shambles. 3 members had resigned, and Brenda was left essentially powerless. According to the HOA bylaws, if the board fell below 3 members, an emergency election had to be held within 30 days. I left that meeting feeling vindicated but also exhausted. This fight had consumed months of my life. The next morning, I received a call from Marcus Thompson. "Stephen, I think we need to take this further. What Brenda did isn't just unethical, it's illegal. She used her position to enrich herself through fraud. We should report this to the authorities." "You mean like the police?" "The district attorney's office handles fraud cases." "I have a contact there, a prosecutor named Jennifer Mills. I'll reach out to her." Within a week, Marcus had arranged a meeting with Jennifer Mills at the Boulder County District Attorney's office. I brought all my documentation, printed and organized in a large binder. Jennifer was a sharp woman in her mid-30s with short dark hair and intelligent eyes. She reviewed everything carefully, asking detailed questions. "This is definitely fraud," she said after an hour. Brenda Patterson used her position in the HOA to create rules that financially benefited her family without proper disclosure. She then enforced those rules through fines and threats, collecting money under false pretenses. The question is whether we can prove criminal intent. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I said. "Every step was calculated." "I believe you, but I need evidence that proves she acted knowingly and intentionally. Do you have any emails or recorded conversations where she discusses the financial benefits?" I shook my head. "Just the business documents showing her husband's ownership." "That helps, but it's not enough for criminal charges. What I can do is open an investigation. We'll subpoena HOA financial records, interview other homeowners, and see what we find. If there's evidence of criminal fraud, we'll prosecute." Marcus and I left the meeting feeling hopeful. At least someone in authority was taking this seriously. The HOA election was held 3 weeks later. I didn't run for the board myself. I had no interest in that kind of responsibility, but Patricia Rodriguez did. So did Marcus Thompson and several other reasonable people from the community. Brenda tried to campaign for re-election, sending out flyers defending her actions and claiming she was the victim of a witch hunt. Most people weren't buying it. Election day arrived, and the turnout was massive. Nearly every household voted. The results were announced that evening. Patricia, Marcus, and 3 other new members were elected. Brenda received only 12 votes out of over 200 cast. She was officially out. The new board's first action was to rescind all snow removal fines. They refunded money to everyone who had paid, totaling over $18,000 across the community. They also revoked the licensing requirements, stating that homeowners could use any contractor they chose, licensed or not, as long as the work was completed in a timely and safe manner. I was personally refunded the $5,000 in fines that had been assessed against me, though I had never actually paid them. My business, Callahan Landscape Services, started picking up clients. I offered fair prices for snow removal, and people appreciated that I had fought for the community. By the end of April, I had contracted with 23 households for the next winter season. The district attorney's investigation continued through the spring and summer. In July, I received a call from Jennifer Mills. "We've found evidence of additional fraud," she said. Brenda wasn't just benefiting from her husband's company, she was receiving direct kickbacks. "We found payments from Altitude Snow Services to her personal bank account, totaling nearly $30,000 over the past year. We also discovered she created several other HOA rules that benefited businesses her family had connections to. This is much bigger than snow removal." "Are you going to press charges?" Yes, we're charging her with fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of power. The charges carry potential prison time. In August, Brenda Patterson was arrested at her home. The news made local headlines. HOA president arrested for fraud, read the Boulder Daily Camera. The article detailed the entire scheme and mentioned my role in exposing it. I received dozens of calls and emails from neighbors thanking me. Several people from other HOA communities in Boulder reached out, asking for advice on dealing with their own corrupt boards. Brenda's trial was scheduled for October. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence. Bank records, emails between Brenda and her husband discussing how to maximize their profits, testimony from homeowners who had been fined unjustly, and documentation of multiple fraudulent schemes beyond just snow removal. I was called to testify. Walking into the Boulder County Courthouse, I felt nervous but determined. I had come this far, I wasn't going to back down now. The courtroom was formal and intimidating. Brenda sat at the defense table with her lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. She wouldn't look at me. I was sworn in and took the witness stand. Jennifer Mills asked me to describe what had happened, starting from the first letter I received. I told the entire story, clearly and calmly. I explained how Brenda's rules had targeted independent contractors, how I discovered her husband's ownership of Altitude Snow Services, how I got licensed myself to fight back, and how the community eventually exposed her fraud. Brenda's lawyer tried to cross-examine me, suggesting I had a personal vendetta and was exaggerating the severity of what happened. But the evidence spoke for itself. Every claim I made was backed up by documents, emails, and testimony from other witnesses. The trial lasted 4 days. In the end, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Brenda Patterson was sentenced to 18 months in prison and ordered to pay restitution of over $50,000 to the Pinewood Heights community. Her husband Robert was charged separately with conspiracy and tax evasion related to the unreported income from the kickback scheme. Standing outside the courthouse after the sentencing, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to live peacefully in my home and have my snow cleared by a reliable contractor. But sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's difficult and exhausting. Patricia Rodriguez, who had attended the trial, put her hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Stephen. You stood up for everyone. We all did it together." "Yeah, but you started it. You could have just paid the fines and moved on. Instead, you became a licensed contractor just to prove a point. That takes guts." I smiled. "Well, at least I got a new career out of it, and I had." Callahan Landscape Services was thriving. Beyond snow removal, I had started taking on other landscaping projects. I hired Mike Henderson as my first employee, and we worked together on various jobs around Boulder. The business I started as an act of defiance had become something real and sustainable. The Pinewood Heights community slowly returned to normal. The new HOA board under Patricia's leadership focused on actual community improvement rather than power plays and money-grabbing schemes. They repaved roads, updated the playground equipment, and organized neighborhood events that brought people together. I continued living in my house, and every winter when the first snow fell, I was out there with my equipment, clearing driveways and walkways. The license I earned out of spite had become something I was genuinely proud of. I was good at this work, and I enjoyed it. One cold December morning, nearly a year after Brenda's arrest, I was finishing up snow removal at Patricia's house. She came outside with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing me one. "Thanks." I took a sip. It was perfect. You know, I was thinking about everything that happened, Patricia said. If Brenda had just been a decent person, none of this would have occurred. She'd still be HOA president living her life. But she got greedy. Greed makes people do stupid things. It really does. Hey, I heard they're releasing her next month. Sentence reduction for good behavior. I nodded. I had heard the same thing. 18 months had become 12. I hope she learned something. Doubtful. People like that rarely change. We stood there in the cold morning, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over the mountains. Despite all the drama and stress of the past year, I felt content. I had a successful business, a supportive community, and the satisfaction of knowing I had fought corruption and won. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a potential new client asking about snow removal services for a small office park in Louisville, the next town over. The business was growing beyond just residential properties. I finished my coffee and started packing up my equipment. There was work to do, snow to clear, and a life to live. The whole experience with Brenda and the HOA had taught me that sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when it seems easier to just go along with injustice. And sometimes, fighting back leads you to unexpected places. As I drove away from Patricia's house, I passed the community center where that pivotal meeting had taken place. New banners hung outside, advertising upcoming community events. The Pinewood Heights HOA had become what it was supposed to be, an organization that served its residents rather than exploited them. I spent the rest of that winter busy with work. The snow fell regularly, and my schedule was packed with jobs. Mike and I worked well together, and we eventually hired a third person, a young guy named Chris who was eager to learn the trade. The following spring, Jennifer Mills called me out of the blue. "Stephen, I wanted to let you know that Robert Patterson just took a plea deal. He's pleading guilty to tax evasion and conspiracy. He'll serve 8 months and pay a significant fine." "Good," I said simply. "I also wanted to thank you again. This case has led to investigations into several other HOAs in Boulder County. You exposed a pattern of corruption that goes beyond just Pinewood Heights. Because of your willingness to fight back, a lot of other homeowners are going to be protected from similar schemes." After hanging up, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. What started as a simple dispute about snow removal had turned into something much bigger. I had made a real difference. Summer came, and the landscape work kept me busy. I installed irrigation systems, designed garden layouts, and helped people create beautiful outdoor spaces. The business grew steadily, and I found myself enjoying the work more than I ever enjoyed my previous career in IT consulting. When autumn arrived, I started preparing for the next winter season. I serviced all my equipment, renewed my insurance and bonding, and confirmed contracts with my regular clients. I had 42 properties signed up for snow removal, more than double from the previous year. One October afternoon, I was working on a landscaping project when I saw a familiar car drive slowly past. It was Brenda. She had been released from prison and was apparently back in the area. Our eyes met for a brief moment. She looked older, tired. Then she drove on. I went back to my work. Whatever Brenda did with the rest of her life was her business. I had moved on. The HOA annual meeting that year was refreshingly boring. Patricia gave a straightforward report on finances, upcoming projects, and community events. There was no drama, no hidden agendas, just a functional community organization doing its job. Several people came up to me afterward to chat and thank me again for what I had done. As winter approached and the temperatures dropped, I found myself actually looking forward to the snow. Each storm was an opportunity to do good work, to help my neighbors, and to run my business with integrity. The license I had earned in defiance of a corrupt HOA had become a symbol of something larger: the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The first major snowstorm of the season hit in mid-November. I was up at 4 in the morning, checking my equipment and planning my route. Mike and Chris met me at 5, and we headed out together. By noon, all 42 properties were cleared, salted, and safe. Every single client sent me a message thanking me for the excellent work. That evening, sitting in my warm house with a hot meal, I reflected on the entire journey. A little over a year and a half ago, I had been an ordinary homeowner with an ordinary life. Then Brenda Patterson had sent me that first threatening letter, and everything changed. I had fought back against corruption, exposed fraud, helped send criminals to prison, started a successful business, and made my community a better place to live. I never imagined that a dispute about snow removal would lead to all of this. But life is unpredictable that way. Sometimes the smallest injustice can become the catalyst for significant change. My phone buzzed with another text from a potential client. A small business owner in Boulder wanted a quote for snow removal at his shop. I replied promptly, as I always did. Good customer service was important to me. I scheduled a time to meet with him and discuss his needs. The business continued growing throughout that winter. I had to turn down some jobs because I simply didn't have enough time or personnel to handle everything. It was a good problem to have. By February, I was seriously considering hiring another employee and purchasing additional equipment. Marcus Thompson called me one cold afternoon. "Stephen, there's a guy who wants to talk to you. He's from the Colorado HOA Alliance, a watchdog group that monitors homeowner associations across the state. They want to interview you about what happened with Brenda." "What for?" "They're creating educational materials about HOA corruption and how homeowners can fight back. Your story is exactly what they need." I agreed to the interview. A week later, a man named Richard Kim came to my house with a camera crew. We spent 3 hours talking about everything that had happened. Richard was genuinely interested and asked thoughtful questions. "Your story is important," Richard said as they were packing up. "A lot of people feel powerless against their HOAs. They need to see that it's possible to fight back and win." The interview was edited into a 20-minute video that the Colorado HOA Alliance posted on their website and social media channels. It got thousands of views. I started receiving emails from people all over Colorado and even other states, telling me their own HOA horror stories and asking for advice. I couldn't help everyone, but I tried to respond to as many messages as possible. I shared what I had learned. Document everything. Organize with your neighbors, understand your rights, and don't be afraid to involve authorities when real crimes are being committed. Spring arrived again, bringing an end to snow removal season. I transitioned back to regular landscaping work. The business was now making more money than I had ever earned in IT consulting, and I was significantly happier. Working outdoors, building something with my own hands, and serving my community gave me a sense of purpose that sitting behind a desk never had. One warm May afternoon, I was installing a sprinkler system when Patricia stopped by. "Hey Stephen, the board wants to give you an award at the summer community picnic. Community Member of the Year or something like that." I laughed. "That's not necessary." "Oh, it's happening whether you like it or not. You saved this community from a criminal. The least we can do is give you a plaque." The community picnic was held in late June at the park near the community center. It was a beautiful sunny day. Kids played on the playground while adults grilled burgers and hot dogs. There was a sense of genuine community that had been missing during Brenda's reign. During the event, Patricia called everyone together. She gave a short speech about the importance of integrity and standing up for what's right. Then she presented me with a plaque that read, "Stephen Callahan, Community Member of the Year, for courage, integrity, and dedication to Pinewood Heights." Everyone applauded. I shook hands with dozens of people, feeling genuinely moved by the recognition. This community had become more than just a place where I lived. It was home. As summer progressed, I kept busy with landscaping projects. I designed a beautiful rock garden for an elderly couple on Cedar Street. I installed a complete irrigation system for the community center. I helped 3 different families create vegetable gardens in their backyards. Every project was satisfying in its own way. In August, I received notice that I needed to renew my landscape contractor license. The renewal process was much simpler than the initial application, just some paperwork and a fee. As I filled out the forms, I thought about how far I had come. What started as an act of defiance had become a legitimate career that I loved. The business continued to thrive. By September, I had hired 2 more employees and purchased a second truck. Callahan Landscape Services was becoming a recognized name in Boulder County. We had expanded beyond Pinewood Heights to serve customers across several communities. One afternoon, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I answered to hear a woman's tentative voice. "Is this Stephen Callahan?" "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Susan. I live in a community in Longmont. Our HOA is doing exactly what happened to you, creating rules that benefit board members' businesses. I saw your video interview, and I was hoping you could give me some advice." I spent 30 minutes on the phone with Susan, walking her through everything I had learned. I told her about documentation, organizing with neighbors, and involving authorities when necessary. By the end of the call, she sounded more confident. "Thank you so much," Susan said. "You've given me hope that we can fight this." "You can. It won't be easy, but it's worth it." That phone call was the first of many. Over the following months, I became an informal advisor to people fighting HOA corruption across Colorado. I never charged anyone for advice. This wasn't about money. It was about helping people stand up to bullies and frauds. As winter approached again, I prepared for another snow removal season. I now had 58 properties under contract. The business required careful planning and coordination, but I had good systems in place and a reliable team. The first snow of the season fell in early November, and we were ready. The team worked efficiently, clearing all contracted properties within hours. I had invested in better equipment, and it made a huge difference in speed and quality. One morning, while clearing snow at a client's house, I noticed someone watching me from across the street. It was Brenda. She was standing in front of a house with a "for sale" sign in the yard. She must have been preparing to move away. I didn't approach her. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choices, faced the consequences, and now had to live with the results. I hoped she had learned something, but that was her journey, not mine. I finished the job and moved on to the next property. Life was too short to dwell on the past. As the winter progressed, my business continued to grow. I was featured in a local business magazine as one of Boulder County's emerging entrepreneurs. The article told the whole story of how I got started, and it generated even more business inquiries. By February, I was seriously considering opening a small office rather than running everything from my house. The business had outgrown my home setup. I found a small commercial space in Boulder, affordable and well located. I signed a lease and moved in during March. Callahan Landscape Services now had a real office with a storefront, equipment storage, and space for my growing team. It felt surreal. 2 years ago, I had been an IT consultant fighting with my HOA about snow removal. Now, I was running a successful landscaping company with 7 employees and over 80 regular clients. The local news did a story about my journey, framing it as a feel-good tale of turning adversity into opportunity. The segment aired during evening news and got positive feedback. More business inquiries flooded in. I had to start being selective about which jobs to take. Patricia stopped by my new office one afternoon. "Look at you, Mr. Entrepreneur. This place is great. Thanks. It's been a wild ride. You know, the community is planning a 2-year anniversary event. 2 years since we exposed Brenda and reformed the HOA. We want you to speak." "About what?" "About standing up for what's right. About not letting bullies win. About turning a bad situation into something positive. Your story inspires people, Stephen." I agreed to speak at the event. It was held on a Saturday afternoon at the community center, the same place where that dramatic meeting had occurred 2 years earlier. Looking around the room, I saw many of the same faces, but the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of anger and chaos, there was positivity and community spirit. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the front feeling nervous. Public speaking had never been my strength, but I looked out at all those familiar faces and felt a sense of connection. 2 years ago, I got a letter in my mailbox, I began. It was a threatening letter from the HOA, telling me my snow removal contractor wasn't good enough. That letter changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. I told the story again, but this time with more perspective and reflection. I talked about the importance of documentation, organization, and persistence. I emphasized that fighting corruption isn't easy, but it's necessary. I thanked everyone who had supported me along the way. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood up, clapping and cheering. It was overwhelming and humbling. Afterward, dozens of people came up to shake my hand and share their own stories. Some had fought their own battles with various authorities or institutions. Others were just grateful that someone had stood up for the community. As the event wound down and people started heading home, I stood outside the community center watching the sunset over the mountains. Colorado was beautiful, and I was grateful to call it home. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Boss, we just got a huge inquiry. A property management company wants to contract us for snow removal at 15 commercial properties next winter. Could be a $50,000 contract." I smiled and texted back. "Set up a meeting. Let's talk to them." The business opportunities kept coming. Callahan Landscape Services was becoming more successful than I ever imagined possible. But success wasn't just measured in money. It was measured in the relationships I had built, the community I had helped protect, and the sense of purpose I felt every day. That summer, I hired my 10th employee, a young woman named Rachel who had just graduated with a degree in horticulture. She brought fresh ideas and enthusiasm to the team. The business was evolving beyond just me and Mike doing snow removal and basic landscaping. We were becoming a full-service landscape design and maintenance company. I also started teaching a class at the local community college. Starting your own landscape business met once a week in the evenings. I shared everything I had learned about licensing, insurance, customer service, and business management. The class filled up immediately with aspiring entrepreneurs. One of my students was a young man named Tyler, who reminded me of myself 2 years earlier, eager but uncertain. After class one evening, he approached me with questions. "You think I can really make it in this business?" Tyler asked. "I don't have much money to start." "I started this business to fight my HOA," I said. "I had no plan to become a landscape contractor." But I committed to doing it right, getting properly licensed and trained. If you're willing to work hard and learn constantly, you can succeed. Tyler ended up becoming my 11th employee after completing the class. He was hardworking and eager to learn, exactly the kind of person I wanted on my team. As another winter approached, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. The business now had contracts with over 100 properties for snow removal. We had purchased additional trucks and equipment. The team was professional and efficient. Callahan Landscape Services had become a respected name in Boulder County. But more than business success, I felt a sense of pride in what I had accomplished. I had stood up to corruption, exposed fraud, helped send criminals to prison, and built something positive from a negative situation. That letter from Brenda 2 years ago, intended to intimidate and control me, had instead become the catalyst for personal growth and success. The first major snowstorm of the third winter hit in late November. Our team mobilized efficiently, clearing over 100 properties in less than 6 hours. The systems and processes we had developed over 2 years of operation worked flawlessly. Every client received excellent service. That evening, exhausted but satisfied, I sat in my office reviewing the day's work. Everything had gone smoothly. The business was thriving. Life was good. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Mills from the district attorney's office. "Stephen, I wanted to let you know that we just closed our final case related to HOA fraud in Boulder County. Your case led to investigations of 7 other HOAs. We've prosecuted 12 people total for various fraud and corruption charges. You started something important." "I just wanted my snow removed properly," I said with a laugh. "Well, you got that and a lot more. Thanks for being willing to fight. A lot of people wouldn't have." After hanging up, I thought about that first letter again. Brenda had tried to bully me into compliance, to force me into using her husband's expensive company through fraudulent rules and threatening fines. She had underestimated my willingness to fight back. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up for what's right, the importance of community, and the unexpected paths life can take. I never planned to become a landscape contractor. It wasn't a childhood dream or long-term goal. It was simply the tool I needed to fight corruption, and it became something much more meaningful. As I locked up the office and headed home that evening, I felt grateful for everything that had happened, even the difficult parts. The struggle had been worth it. The victory had been sweet. And the life I was now living was better than I could have imagined. Pinewood Heights was home. My business was thriving. My community was healthy and free from corruption, and I had discovered a career that gave me purpose and satisfaction. All because I refused to back down when a corrupt HOA president named Brenda Patterson tried to bully me. Sometimes the worst moments in life lead to the best outcomes. That threatening letter in my mailbox 2 years ago had been one of the worst moments. Everything that followed, the fighting, the licensing, the business, the community reform, had been among the best. I drove home through the snowy streets of Boulder, passing houses where my team had cleared driveways and walkways earlier that day. Lights glowed warmly in windows. Families were inside, safe and secure, not having to worry about corrupt HOA schemes or fraudulent fines. That was worth everything. That was why I fought. And as I pulled into my own driveway, cleared and salted by my own hand earlier that morning, I smiled. Life was good. The battle was over. The corrupt had faced justice, and I had found my calling in the most unexpected way possible. The story of how an HOA tried to force me into using their preferred contractor, and how I became licensed myself to fight back, had a happy ending after all.